Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Samurai Goddess. The goddess next door takes on kung fu killers in this action-packed martial arts Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today. Where do social justice warriors go for a job these days? The comic book industry. And the reason why they're going into the comic book industry is because we have a lot of white knights and a lot of manginas at the heads of the comic book industry. And because these guys don't know anything about craft, they don't establish any standards for their business. So they're letting a lot of social justice warriors into the comic book industry and thinking that they can just come here as a place to work, not understanding that these are the people who undermine your business. Now, most of your social justice warriors, yes, they have college degrees, but they have degrees in things like women's studies and anthropology, majors that have absolutely no value in the real world, and they need a place to collect a paycheck to pay for their student loans and their lattes at Starbucks. So they need a easy job, so they figure they'll just go into the comic book industry and they'll have a job. Now, over 20, 30 years ago, these were the people who used to walk into teaching. And the reason why they walked into teaching was because when it came down to the public schools back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s had very low standards. So it was a place where your people who used to major in things like anthropology, women's studies, and other useless majors like foreign languages and things like that would go to find a nice job that would sustain them until their retirement. However, over the last 15, 16 years, the standards and requirements for becoming a teacher have changed. So a lot of those social justice warriors and those women's studies majors and those anthropology majors couldn't go into the public school systems because many public school systems across the country have raised their bar as related to standards. And they now require, like here in New York, you're required to have a master's degree and you're required to have a teaching license and teaching certification. So you have to meet certain standards for being a school teacher here in New York City and across the country. So many of your women's studies majors and the people who make up the bulk of these social justice warriors who took easy majors in college, they could not enter into teaching and collect an easy check. So they wound up needing a place to get a job, and that place these days has become the comic book industry. So they're in the comic book industry because these people have no place to go. A lot of the other jobs they also got in addition to teaching, they were sent overseas. So they're coming into the comic book industry looking for an easy paycheck. And these mangina editors who were a part of the 90s collapse, a lot of these guys, they don't understand the craft of comics, nor do they understand the business. So they're letting these people come in to be editors, writers, and come in to create comics, but no one is teaching any of these people any of the craft, and that's why there's been a serious decline in the craft, because we have editors who know nothing about the craft of comic book writing or the craft of creating a creative team for comics, nor do we have anybody with a vision to mentor people. So we have people writing comics trying to push political agendas, not understanding that comic books are a commercial product. They're not about pushing a political agenda. They are about selling a commercial product and selling a character as a commercial product to readers. So when you're creating a comic book, yes, there are messages and themes you're putting in there, but your whole objective is to sell that character to readers and sell that character as a product, because the comic book is a product. It is not just something made for a political agenda. It is meant to be sold and meant to make money for the business. And this is the big problem with these social justice warriors. They are about pushing agendas, not about understanding that publishing is a business, and that the business they're getting into has the highest risk because 90% of all trade books fail, including comic books. And if you don't have a strong story or a strong plan for marketing those comics, they're not going to sell. People don't want to buy something that's pushing a political agenda. They want an escape, and social justice warriors want to give you a problem. However, comic books were originally designed to be an escape from people's problems. They were designed for a place to get away from your problems for 45 minutes to an hour, and here you have the social justice warrior trying to bring you a problem. This is one of the reasons why comics just aren't selling like they used to, because instead of giving the customer what they want, which is that escape, the social justice warrior wants to give the reader another problem. People already have enough problems. They go to read comics to get away from their problems. And the great irony of the whole situation is that you have these people who are social justice warriors. They are out to escape from the world, from their problems, and they're coming and they're bringing their problems into the comic book industry. And the big problem is that you have a lot of these people who went to college and they just took really bad majors, and now they're finding out that these weren't really the majors that are going to make you any serious money. Now, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, these are the people, again, they used to go into teaching, and what would happen is you had these municipal governments who could absorb these costs for the social justice warriors. When it came down to these people coming into the payroll, yeah, they could be teachers for years. And what they would do is they would sit there, do a minimum of work, and meet minimum standards. And what they would do is just sit there and collect a check on everybody's dime from the taxes, because it was all public money. Unfortunately, the comic book industry is a private business. Companies like Marvel and DC are private businesses, and they can't absorb the costs of social justice warriors and people who want to come in here and make money and have a place to pay their student loans and get some money for Starbucks, because they are a business that operates for profit. And if you don't sell books, you don't make money. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, this corporation, Disney or Warner Brothers, they will continue to fund a publishing house like DC or Marvel and have a place for these people to collect a check. But that's not the case at all. If a division of a multinational corporation does not make money, they shut that division down, and then they lay off staff. And this is one of the big problems your social justice warriors and many of your liberals don't understand, is that this is a business and it has to be run like a business. People who come into a business have to meet certain standards for working there. They have to meet certain qualifications regarding their professional skills in order to work there. So in order to work in comics, you have to have some sort of background in publishing. You have to understand how some of the mechanics work. Just saying on Twitter that you don't like Donald Trump shouldn't be the thing that gets you an interview for working at a comic book company. What should be getting you an interview for working at a comic book company are the publications you have worked on, the articles you have worked on, showing that you have a track record of publications or a track record of sales, or if you have an art style that tells a very good story, or if you're an editor, if you have a vision and a direction that you want to set a character in. These are things that would be considered professional qualifications. However, in this age of social justice warriors, this is not considered the standard that people have for hiring people in the comic book industry. This is why I say that comic book industry has become the new teaching, because back again in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, we had all these people who had taken these majors like anthropology, women's studies, languages, mathematics, and things like that. and weren't very good at it, they would just say they weren't good at it, so they became teachers in the public school system. And while the government paid them to just ruin the lives of children on the government's dime, we wound up with people getting really bad educations and a lot of people dropping out of school because these people were more about their agendas or they were more bitter about their lives not going right. So they would passive aggressively take things out on the kids in public schools. And now we have these people coming into the comic book industry, and what they're doing is passive aggressively taking out their anger and frustrations about their lives on comic book readers. And that's not right in both cases because why should a child have their lives ruined by someone who doesn't like teaching? And why should a comic book fan have their hobby ruined by individuals who, one, don't like comic books, don't like comic book characters, don't like comic book storytelling, and are angry about the state of their lives? No, those people shouldn't be in the comic book industry, and they have no place in the comic book industry. The comic book industry should be for people who love the characters, love the stories, and have passion about those characters and want to be there. As a guy who has wanted to be a comic book writer since he was 14, 15 years old, I would love to be in this comic book industry because I love Marvel Comics, I love DC Comics characters, I love those superheroes, and they meant something to me because this was how I learned to read, and these characters have been a major part of my life, and they helped me get through hard times, and I want to be able to share those characters with the next generation of kids. Yet a guy like me couldn't get into the comic book industry because of the brick wall that's been there, and it really irks me to see people coming into the industry who don't like it and are treating it in the exact same way many of the public school teachers I grew up with treated teaching, and discouraged an entire generation of kids, or two generations of kids, to not like learning because all those people who came into teaching who hated the job and were just there for a check, they were the reason why so many kids dropped out of high school and wanted nothing to do with school because this person came in here, they took some bad majors, or they didn't really like school, so they came in and they decided because they couldn't do anything else, they wanted to teach. And now we have these people coming into the comic book industry because there's no place for them. No, there should be a standard set that if you want to come into the comic book business, you should want to be a part of the comic book business. You should care about the comic book business, and you should have some heart regarding the comic book business because it's that passion and heart that's going to come across on the page. And the comic book industry should have a standard in place because it shouldn't be a dumping ground for people who don't like the characters, don't like the stories, don't like the entire model of comics, and don't like the paradigm that is related to comics or the business of comic books. It should be treated more like a business, and it should have professional standards. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing at Marvel and DC and even some of the indies is that people who can't are now going to comics because they know they cannot teach anymore. If you'd like to see me make more videos on this channel, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try out some of my SJS Direct Universe titles like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, The Temptation of John Haynes, and even other books that are in the SJS Direct catalog like the Spinsterella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.